Good morning, everybody. Welcome to MPC BI webinar brought to you by Malaysia Productivity Corporation or MPC. My name is Yuzaidiu Danis. So you can call me UU, and I will be the moderator for today's sessions. Today's topic is enhancing behavior insights to create sustainable behavior change at work. This is a very interesting topic. We are all, work from home. We can be, it's totally probably some of us be distracted. What we have supposed to work, we're supposed to do. Well, the webinar sessions today is aims to promote awareness on BI initiative, to create a strategic network and potential collaborations among BI community, and to develop a better understanding on BI to the nations. So our presenter today is the expert himself. We are so lucky to have him, Mr. Isaac Peter. How are you, sir?
Morning, Zaidi. Thank you very much for having me for this session. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Perhaps, Isaac, maybe you can start your, to introduce yourself as brief introductions before we dive into your presentations. I'm so excited to learn and to listen to your presentations. But first, the audience need to know what is, some brief introduction from you. Thank you, Isaac. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much. So for start, I think I like to set the context that this is a two-way thing. So I don't see myself as an expert. Rather, I see myself a lot more as a practitioner. So I've been doing some stuff, and this session is a lot more to introduce what I do. So a bit more about what I do and where I'm coming from. So I run a company called People Performance, and our focus is a lot more in the area of learning and behavioral change. So we do a lot of this work both in Singapore and Malaysia. I am a Malaysian, but I've worked in Singapore since the year 2000. So this is my company, and they focus very much in the area of culture, leadership, and team development. Now, just a bit more about me. I won't go so much into a qualification. I'll just go straight away to where our audience is looking at in terms of experience in behavioral-based program. And hopefully this gives you a sense that the sharing today will be very practical. So I'm going to share with you practical tips as well as insights, and also what are some things to look out for when we are applying behavioral-based techniques, right? So while in Singapore, I had opportunity to work with IRAS, which is the Inland Revenue Authority, which is very similar to LDHN, and I understand that Lembaga Hasil has been using behavioral insights successfully, and I thought that was amazing. So there are certain things I can share, I will share. Then we did leadership development programs. Once again, it's all very behavioral based, and I will perhaps later share what are the differences. So that's my background. I started off very much an engineer. So maybe I'm biased, but I find engineers will probably adopt or adapt behavioral insights a little bit easier because it's about breaking things down. Now, specifically to our content today, these are some of the what I call the outcomes that we are looking at for today's session. Right?
Okay. Before we dive into the presentation, Isaac, maybe I would like to welcome Puan Sawiyah from MPC, and also her team, wonderful and hardworking team, Puan Shatini, and all the gang from MPC at the BI unit. In BI units, probably, and also we have so many of BI experts are here. Isaac, we have so many. I'm so excited. We hope that we'll be able to interact and communicate and engage. You can ask any questions to the presenter today by clicking the hands icon. Can you see the hands icon? So when you click it, I will unmute your mic, and you need to unmute your mic in your other hand. So for example, your laptop or your device or handphone, and you'll be able to speak directly to the presenter. That's one. Number two, you can even type the question, any of your questions here at the questions column, and I will try my best. To post those questions to our presenter today. So that's it. I think two ways. Please interact, please engage, and please ask any questions. I think Isaac welcomes all the questions, so we need a lot of questions and engage We are here to learn, we are here to share, and sharing is caring. So without further ado, I will pass the stage to Mr. Isaac Peter. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Zaidi, thank you very much. I like your statement. Sharing is caring. So that's definitely what we're doing. Now, so these are the outcomes that I'm looking to share. So the title is Enhancing Behavioral Insights to Create Sustainable Behavioral Change at Work. And one of the things that I like about behavioral insights is how subtly it can be used. But in this session, I'm going to share in terms of my take in terms of the strength and the limitations, because everything has strength and limitation. Then I'm going to share some simple strategies of how to use behavioral insights at home, because over the next period, we are going to be staying at home, and some people are very challenged because of how do I work, as well as managing things with kids running up and down and stuff. How do we do that? So I'll share some simple tips. Then I'm going to go into what we call the whole person approach to behavioral change, which is something enhancing behavioral insights. It goes into the individual. Then I will use a basic model called trans-theoretical and share with you how this can be used to practically create change programs in organization that is more sustainable. And finally, tips and suggestions along the way. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, this presentation, we have about 50 minutes. This presentation I'm breaking down into 3 sections. First is behavioral insights in organization, and this is in a way, it's like a recap, a refresh on behavioral insights. And then the next thing we'll go in, we say beyond behavioral, going beyond nudges, because one of the fundamental principle in behavioral insights is nudging. So we're going to go beyond that, and that's why I'm going to share a bit more details. And finally, it's going to be a case study. So this case study is a program that we have designed using behavioral insights, as well as the outcome, and I will show you the inner working. And this is something usually I don't talk with clients because it's into the details. So what you need to be expecting over this session is that some sharing on concepts, some basic concepts and theories, because as practitioners, it is very, very important to understand the underlying principle of what we design. All right. Now, the way I would like this presentation to go is the chat box is there for you to type in your questions in terms of what you need to ask, any clarification. I welcome disagreements, meaning if you have a different opinion or if you have done something different, please share it. And then Encik Zaidi and I will pick it up and bring and surface it to the group. That's one. So each section, so after behavioral insights in organization, we'll do a Q&A. During the Q&A, Encik Zaidi will unmute for those of you who prefers to speak instead of typing. After the second module is the same, and after the third one, I'll create more space for Q&A. Because I understand the target audience are practitioners, I will try to keep the first portions as short as possible and keep the last portion as long as possible, so that I can address your questions to make this session more practical based on my experience.
Great.
So behavioral insights in a snapshot, right? If you think about it, despite all there's a lot of things said, but if I were to filter everything down to the most basic, behavioral insight is really about improving compliance with our stakeholders to achieve our desired goal by implementing strategies that make it convenient for them. So the whole approach of BI is about making it convenient so that people don't feel it's not so difficult for people to do it, right? Now, for those of you who are real practitioners, you realize one of the fundamental principles is this EAST framework, EAST. In order for behavioral insights to be successful, we basically need to make whatever we are doing easy. So, for example, making the instruction clear, breaking the instruction to small steps, that's important. Making it attractive. So, either using incentives or making it into a game, something fun, so people enjoy doing, which is why you start to realize things like gamification is getting very, very popular. Then making it social. So you talk about, if people know everybody's doing, then people are more likely to do. So using social is very important, and I find this is very effective in our culture, because the Malaysian culture is one which is extremely social. And then making it timely, which is sending reminders, right? So for example, you have an appointment tomorrow, you get a reminder today saying, please let us know you are still coming or not. So those are what we call the underlying principles. And I'm sharing this a lot more for some of the audience who are not BI practitioners, but something for them to consider. Application. If I were to bring down at a very basic level, at the moment, most of the time BI is used in transactional matters, where it's about, for example, paying fines, paying taxes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I think the line's been dropped. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. So application-wise, currently most of the time is about transactional matters. So like paying fines, paying taxes, as well as following procedures, things like safety, hygiene, courteous, being courteous, right? So those are very obvious areas where behavioral insight is being used at the moment. Benefits of using behavioral insights. I would say three main things. Firstly, it's measurable because with behavioral insight, we are looking at the behavior itself. So that is important. The other thing is culturally independent. So you can use the same methodology in Malaysia as well as in Singapore or anywhere around the world, because the framework is pretty robust to do it. So I thought that was good. Third is relatively quick to pick up the skills, because that you don't need to have prefer to have like social scientists or anthropology kind of knowledge, or even behavioral science or neuroscience, but if you don't have that, behavioral insight is very easy to pick up. So from a perspective of rolling it out, it's very good. It's very fast. Now, those are the benefits. What I like to bring, at least for this part of the session with practitioners, is what we call the kind of challenges that we face in behavioral insights. So let me share with you an article that it's in January in Singapore. Now this article talks about no more crowds at some reverse vending machine after rewards reduced. Now, so what happened was, I think late last year, Singapore, together with FNN, came out with this concept of, let's incentivize people to recycle. So what they did was, they have this vending machine where you go in and you just put in 2 pieces of cans, and then 4 pieces of cans, and what happens is you get 20 cents in voucher, right? So you incentivize that. What happened was, there was a long line of people who will come with plastic bags and start doing it. Now, what happened was, later on they decided to tweak between trying to reduce the crowd and trying to see how do we get people to recycle more naturally. They reduced it from 4 items you get 20 cents to 20 items you get 20 cents. What happened was, the adoption rate of it dropped drastically, and I thought this was a good example of the consideration we need when we are using behavioral insights. Right? I'm not very familiar with some of the Malaysian example, but this is something that was in the newspaper. I thought it was good for us to see that. All right. So we have come to the part where I'm going to get you to give some feedback. On the screen, I have indicated some challenges that I see, or what we call some of the limitations when we work with behavioral insights. First, I would say mindset. Some people do perceive behavioral insights as manipulative, because you're getting people to do something that they generally wouldn't do. So you do that. That's one. And this is where sometimes I call it a values conflict, because there are people who believe people should do things out of goodness, and we shouldn't be making them do things. So people may perceive as that one. The other thing is I call resistance from senior leaders. What I mean is, because for behavioral insights in organization, there needs to be a buy-in from the senior leadership, because without them, because the application and implication is organizational wide. So there will be resistance, and most of the time resistance comes from a mindset perspective, and that's something that we need to look at. Some people say a line is not stable.
Yeah, the line is not really stable. Yeah, but it's okay now. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
It's down.
All right. So the next one I talk about the challenges with applying behavioral insights is economic. It's if you are an organization of 10 people, you can not so much an issue, but if you are, so for example, government agencies and all, it's usually a lot. The application has to be big. If you are doing only for 10 people, it's not economical, because the amount of effort to create a BI intervention it's time consuming, right? You need to go through the identifying the right behaviors, stakeholders interview. You need to test before you finally launch. So it tends to be time consuming, and challenge, especially where I come from, the corporate side. Time is always an issue. So I do find challenges with behavioral insights. Using the BI way can be a bit challenging with this. And finally, what I call the unintended consequence. Now, so if you are doing behavioral insights, what could be the unintended consequence? Firstly, is increased expectation for all services, and I'm sharing this in the context of because my understanding with MPC is working with a lot of government agencies and ministries. What will happen is, for example, Lembaga Hasil is now using behavioral insights a lot. What would happen is citizens and communities are going to expect other agencies and other ministries to be doing exactly what Lembaga Hasil does, because the expectation is you guys are all the same. You are Malaysian government, so you need to be doing. So that's going to happen. And if some of the ministries are not ready for this, then it's going to be a very reactive rather than proactive approach. Second is this thing called perceived shift in responsibility. I noticed this a lot when I've noticed this a lot in Singapore, where let's say you haven't paid something, and you get a notice to say that you are given an email to say that you are now there's a fine given because you didn't pay. First thing people will say, you didn't remind me. So that is a what we call a shift in responsibility. There is an expectation that the agency now has to put in extra effort to make me do my part. Now, the implication of that is cost. What will happen over time? You will see cost of service in the agency level is going to go up, because you're going to need more people who has more insights in this. When you talk about BI, you can't run away from visuals. So you do need a lot of expertise. It will also cause you to require new capabilities and skills. So those are some of the challenges I noticed. I thought this time let's open the session for Q&A. Let's give about, say, 5 minutes in terms of challenges. So please indicate any challenges you face with regards to BI.
Okay, Isaac, while waiting for the questions or some suggestion or the points of view, I noticed you're very familiar with Singapore's atmosphere, Singapore's environments and adaptations on the BIs in Singapore. Why is it? Why is BI strategy is very effective in Singapore? Which is it because of the small numbers of populations and well contained? Is it because of the collaterals, beautiful collaterals, which is the nice poster, the designs, and the location? What's the number one reason why BI is very effective in Singapore, Isaac?
I would say if you ask me to pick one point, I would say mindset. Right, Singapore culture. So when I first went over to Singapore, that was in 2000. I was surprised because I am reminded to pay my bills, whereas when in Malaysia, you don't get bills, you get fined, then you have to make an appeal. So what I noticed is the mindset of what we call service mindset, and I found that. So when I started to dig further, I find that Singapore is a very different culture than Malaysia. In Malaysia, our culture is more people-centric. Singapore's culture tends to be a bit more task-centric. So the appreciation is a lot higher with that. Yeah. So culture is a major part. Check out my other sharing session on culture, where I share a bit more the Malaysian culture, and you have some idea why it is harder to adopt in Malaysia. I wouldn't say it's impossible. It is hard. It is starting to take on traction. Yeah. So it's culture, the major change, major difference.
The culture. People say culture is you are born with the culture you have. You can't reset the culture. You can't even change the culture. But a lot of big companies has done that to change the environment, the culture, everything. But it's not easy. With the mass population, like in Malaysia, we have so many, so wide varieties, diversification of races, the religion, the demographics, and the background. What do you think, sir?
Okay, so, if I were to identify what's one single thing we can do to kind of improve everything, is really education. So once again, if you look at Malaysian demographic, you have the kampong, you have the city areas, and education level is very different. If you look at Singapore, the education performance and standard is nominalized across the whole country. Yes, the usual argument in Singapore is small, it's easy to be done. So I would agree it's faster to get it done in Singapore, but Malaysia can do it. It's just that we need to have what we call the will to do it. And so one of the things, so when we talk about culture, one of the major differences I noticed between both countries is the separation between politics and execution. So for example, the Ministry of Education in Singapore, decisions tend to be made more at the exco level rather than the political level. So but that can be a sensitive thing to go into more details.
Yeah,
but if you ask, that's one major thing. Yeah.
I understand. A question from the Puan Maretul, from MPC. Why people still cannot differentiate between BI and marketing advertising techniques? Yeah, I think that's a good question. Very good question.
Fair enough. Okay, so the thing is this. You behavior insight, you must see it from as a tool, right? It's a toolkit. It's maybe a spanner, or is maybe a spanner inside a toolbox. When you say marketing, the marketing is the toolbox. If I'm using as an analogy, so behavior insight is just one part of it. So it say is the hammer, right? But you put your hand inside the toolbox and you pull out the hammer. It's the same. So BI is a tool. Marketing is the toolbox. Does that give a contrast?
Wow, that's very good analogy. It's a good layman analogy. Perhaps BI is very new in Malaysia. Even though we have been the MPC trying to champion, trying to give all the webinars informations, but there's we need to do a lot more to promote BI in the Malaysian situations. Question from Puan Nur Azli. You say, it's a fair question. How to start? How to start the process conducting BI? We know BI is very important. How to start? How to make it more effective? Yeah, that's right.
Good question. That one you need to go back to Puan Sawia and her team. It's too short to address in this session. But once again, if there is a request for that, we can always have another one, because I just want to. I'm very specific to just want to address this for today.
Right, okay.
I hope that's okay. Is it okay for us to move with that new question?
Yeah, great. Maybe another question, another one or two questions. How do you measure? Is a question from Normaliza. How do you measure whether the BI intervention are successful or not? What are the methods that use? Maybe they have some methodology or whatever. Maybe this is maybe a general questions, Isaac.
Sure. So okay, good. So BI has to be measured at the outcome level. So what do I mean by outcome level? For example, you want to reduce accident rates, or you want to increase compliance. So for example, you look at Lembaga Hasil, I'm sure one of their measurable is rate of compliance, which means how many people are paying up one. There will probably be another measure of how the delay in compliance. So those who pay 1 month later, those who pay 2 months later, they'll probably have those as secondary and secondary measurement. Why? Because if they know, say 10% of population is paying 10% late, 10 days, if let's say the 10% of population is paying 1 month late, then what they will do is they will create another BI intervention to reduce the 1 month delay into exact compliance. So measurement is at outcome. So it's not at a behavior. So you don't measure behavior level, you measure outcome level. So for example, as I said, compliance, so paying your taxes, paying fines, those are measurable. You can put into numbers. So yeah, so I hope that explains on the measurement part.
Next questions from Puan Nurul Helmi. Say, hi Isaac, you have mentioned about some might perceive BI intervention as manipulative. So how do you address that if society or stakeholder notice such interventions were designed to alter their behavior? Yeah, Isaac, just before I let you to answer the questions. Maybe there are some BIs, what they call it, BIs nudges, which is by default. By default, you know, if you want to change it, you have to click it. You have to make an effort to click it. No, I'm not interested.
Yep.
But it's by default. So maybe there are some perception that these are actually manipulative exercise.
Okay. Fair enough. So that's why if you look in the foundation of BI, one of the things that we talk about is ethics, right? So ethics is one point. I think the other thing is being involved in the design stage. One of the biggest challenge in a lot of project work is not sufficient conversation during design stage. And so if you look at the methodology for BI, which is the basics, there's this thing talk about, you know, removing the biasness from the equation. So that actually deals with the perception of manipulation. That's one. Secondly, what we call values conflict. So one of the things is to be able to address people. That's one. Secondly, is to show people that what they want to do is actually aligned with their values. So it's a lot about what we call communication. So that itself is a topic by itself. But very to just be succinct, it's not really about manipulation. It's a perception. So we need to address the perception and not say perception and push it aside. Yeah.
I can see your hands by Puan Aziza Jamil. Are you there, Puan Aziza? Puan Aziza, you have to unmute your mic. You have to unmute your mic on your device. Puan Aziza, are you there, Puan Aziza Jamil? All right, perhaps she's not ready yet. Maybe you can proceed to your second module.
Yeah, let me proceed, because at the end of the day, I will give you more time for more Q&A, right? All right. So one of the things that in society we were talking about how do you use BI at home, right? So one of the things that
very interesting.
So I'm a certified behavioral specialist, so I use psychometric profiling with some of my clients. And one of the things that we ask ourselves, especially when you talk about implementing strategies, is what kind of a person are you? So for working from home, generally we talk, are you more people-oriented or are you more task-oriented? So I'm going to break the strategies into two groups of people. Now, if you are more people-oriented, that means, you know, between work and people, you spend more time with people, then these strategies may work. So what I may want to do is, first is come out agreement with your stakeholder. In this case, is your spouse. Never assume your spouse knows is your work hour. That doesn't work. So make sure that you have a conversation, not a WhatsApp. Have a conversation about, hey, sayang, tomorrow I got call from this hour, or I need 3 hours in the morning to do. I just need dedicated time. Can you help me take care of the children? I know they'll be screened. Can you do that one? Now agree on the timing. So that's the first thing you want to do. Secondly, create a physical space that gives you a sense of the office. Without going into the details, our surrounding affects our behavior, right? Which is why if most of the time if people have training, they say, can we have it outside the office? Because if not, they'll be disturbed. So you want to create a space. Now, if you have a room, great. Use the room. Now, question is, what if I don't have a room? If you don't have a room, my suggestion is do not face into the people area, which means if you are sitting at the table, don't face it to where your children and your wife will be, because the minute you see them, you are distracted. Yeah. I suggest you face it towards a window, so you are looking outside. That's one. Secondly, put things around your workplace so that it feels like the office, right?
Yes.
Then make an agreement not to take anything. So if you have your computer, don't suddenly unplug your laptop, go to the sofa, sit down and do work. Do that, only cut out the whole plan, right? For fun, you can hang a signboard that says office at the door or the entrance. Now, for these kind of things, you can actually get your children to come and help make things, because then once again, it's about stakeholder buy-in, right? The more they do, the more they realize, oh, Papa is busy, so they will stay away. Agree on what is emergency. So, for example, your child say stomach ache, on go toilet, that's not emergency. But it says somebody fall and that's emergency, so you want to agree on that. And then have regular breaks, because if you're a very people person, you're always thinking of your family members. So you want to have regular breaks so that you can be with them. And then if your spouse also works, then you have to agree on each other's office hour. Hopefully this is some practical tips.
Yeah. Interesting, very interesting.
Okay. Now let me share if you are more task oriented. Now, task oriented people is a bit easier because they are very focused at work. But what's important is they need to communicate their expectation to the spouse, which means, hey, afterwards from 9 to 5, 9 to 12, I'll be doing some work. Please take care of children. Don't make them. So the difference here is you tend to be telling more. That's one. Because we are such a people culture, you need to assure your spouse that you care for them. Even if you don't seem to care what's going on. So let's say something dropped in the kitchen and you don't go and say, hey, is everything okay? You need to assure your spouse that you care for them. This is at the psychological level. So you do need to show that. And then thirdly, and this is something that can happen. Let's say we tend to be more cheery with our customers sometimes, or our colleagues. So let's say you're doing your conference call and then there's a lot of laughter and all, and then it's something that people at home can hear. It is important after your work hour that you actually sit down with your spouse and explain to them what happened. If you don't, a lot of different thoughts will come in. Yeah. So these are some basic strategies.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that I agree 100%. Communication.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So these are some simple things about from the work from home scenario. Okay. Let me kind of bring to a conclusion to this first part. So the conclusion is this: BI. When is BI useful and when is the BI limited when it comes to using it? It is useful when you want to get people to comply by creating a favorable environment. So I use the word favorable environment because if everything is made easy, I will do it, right? So this is not about developing people. BI is not about developing people. BI is about getting people to comply. It is about adhering to fairly straightforward processes, right? And then BI is also useful to minimize people-to-people interaction. So for example, when I was doing a project with Inland Revenue Singapore, we actually map out everything from the best service is no service, which means you don't even come to the agency. You do everything online. So that's what we mean by minimizing people-to-people interaction. Now, in the workplace, BI is limited when it comes to creating a sense of ownership in people. Now, so in the area of getting people to be more proactive, getting people to take sense of ownership of their mistakes, leadership development. So BI is limited. In my opinion, BI is limited in the area. The other part is the limitation of BI is the behavior will look like it has changed, but but the minute you remove all those support, the behavior may go back to the old behavior, just like the example I shared with you with regards to the reverse vending machine, right? So with BI, behavior change lasts as long as the support is given. So let's take quick. So that's the first part. Any other question? So I'm going to shall we move on, or do I have any questions for me?
Move on. Then we keep all the questions at the end of the session. Is it okay,
Great.
Isaac?
More than happy to.
Yeah.
All right. So let me introduce something what we call the whole person development, right? The whole person development talks about a person not just, so when we talk about behavior, we talk about, if you look at this model at the bottom, we talk about the hand. So when behavior focuses a lot on the action, a whole person development focuses on the heart and the head of the person, right? Now the head, heart, hand is a very popular model. I'm an NLP practitioner, so it's very popular among NLP practitioners. It is a model that is used a lot with people in the area of EQ. Now, as we go through this model, I'm going to share with you very briefly what are some of the body of knowledge that goes into people development. There's no one way, but this is the way that I'm using it. So if, looking at the picture on the left, there's the head and the heart. So usually what happens is there's this thing called the interaction between the head and heart. So for example, you see somebody running towards you, right? And your heart, and you feel nervous. So when you feel nervous, your head will start telling you all the scary stories. Naturally, all the negative thoughts will come when you feel nervous. And it's what we call reinforcing. So you feel nervous, your head start bringing up all the negative ideas, and then because those ideas are negative, you become even more nervous. So this is what we call reinforcing. Now, if this goes on, what happens is it affects the way you do things. So, for example, let me use a workplace example. You see somebody walking to you with a very serious face, right? And emotionally you feel, hey, is there something wrong? Then your mind would go on, did I do something wrong? Why is this fella looking like that? Did somebody tell him something about me? So those thoughts will go in. Now what happens is it triggers the brain to be more defensive, and therefore when it comes to the action, you notice we become very cautious with the person. We limit what we share because we don't want to get into trouble, right? Now this is what happens. The more we limit ourselves, the person who's talking to us may be wondering, why are we not cooperative? Now when they get the message, when they feel that we are not cooperative, guess what? Their actions is going to be more harder. So that's where you notice the ding and dong will happen. So understanding how the head communicates with the heart and leads to the hand, it's a very important piece of model when we talk about behavioral change. This is what we notice when we talk about behavioral people development and behavioral change. Default setting. Default setting means as I'm just going along, things happen to me. I've never thought about it, right? Our emotion influence our thinking and therefore drive our behavior. So for example, if you go into a meeting not expecting people to ask you tough questions, the minute they ask you tough question, your emotion is, why is this making it difficult? Now your emotion is, yeah, he makes me look bad. Your thinking is, why is he making it difficult? And therefore your behavior becomes more negative. Now, deliberate intention basically talks about, have I considered, which is why we talk about scenario planning, becomes very important. We talk about simulation. Now, in deliberate scenario, let's say, for example, you are going to a meeting. And before you go to the meeting, you have considered, what if people ask me tough questions? What should I do? Now, what is happening is your thinking is reprogramming how you should feel towards those questions. Because you have thought about it, your behavior becomes less defensive. Does that make sense?
Very.
So this is the foundation of where we're going. And this presentation is going to focus a lot between the interaction of the head and the heart, and because this is where real behavioral change happens. Okay. So let me share with you some very interesting facts when we go into this thing called neuroscience. So neuroscience is a study of the nervous system, right? And a fundamental thing that most people get aha is the brain is a survival mechanism. Our brain is not interested in us being successful. Our brain is not interested in us doing extra work. Our brains just want us to be in a survival mode. If you think about survival mode, it is about trying to last as long as possible. If you think about lasting as long as possible, it is about how do I conserve energy. Conserve energy in the brain context is not to think too much. So there are three parts of the brain that I thought was interesting to just share. Firstly is the fight or flight. That means if our brain perceives what people is doing to us as negative, we will either go head on or we'll run away. So you look from a nudge theory, we always say about making it easy, making it convenient, making it fun, right? It is all about making the brain to view it as something that's pleasurable. So that's one, and this is controlled by the amygdala. Secondly, the brain is survival mechanism. It creates a lot of what we call automated behavior. So when we start to behave in an automatic way, our brain thinks less. Now, this is important because a lot of our habits cannot change because our brain finds it too much of an energy taking just to change our behavior, right? And therefore, you do need to do something else to supercharge behavior insights at the behavior level. And thirdly, simplifying information. Because our brain try not to think so much, it comes out of filter. So we tend to generalize, we tend to stereotype, because those are easier to remember. So those are some how our brain affects us. Now you look at the last line I call sense making is the brain's need to make sense. Now this is very powerful because one thing that makes difference between behavioral change and behavioral insights is sense making. In behavioral insights, the person we are doing it to does not need to know what we are trying to achieve. All they need to know is what they need to do. With behavioral change, it's important for us to talk to the person and to show them why we need them to do it. So sense making is very important. Example of sense making: if you see your boss and one other woman walk into a hotel, you have some ideas, right? Good or bad is a different question, but you will make sense of it. That's how our brain works, and that's very important. Later I show you how it affects us. Now, so this is the way the brain works. Now, that's more here. Now, behavior, right? There's this model that I use in terms of working with people. It's called trans-theoretical model, and this is another centerpiece that we use working with people in terms of how do we change behavior. This model was in the 70s. It was started because the scientists, this guy named Prochaska and Di Clementi, wanted to find out why some people quit smoking and quit forever, whereas some people, the minute the support system is taken away, they go back to smoking. So that was their premise of the theory, and they discovered there are 6 parts to this model that actually help, right? So central to the model is individual must desire it. So basically, for behavioral change to happen, the individual must want to change. So that's where a lot of the effort goes in. Now, nudging is part of it, and I will show you where this later. So without going, I'm trying not to complicate things, but just to give you an idea of the 6 steps. And if you want it later, if you all can either drop me an email or something, I can always share the document with you, a more lengthy explanation. But simply, if you look at free contemplation, this is basically telling people are not aware of their problems. And if you are a leader of organization, you need to realize just because you see the problem doesn't mean they see the problem. So it's important for them to know it. That goes to the second level. It's about it's about making them aware that their behavior is contributing problem. The key to this is they must be able to acknowledge it. If you are telling, so for example, I'm telling you, Zaidi, you are creating this problem, but you don't actually believe it, then it's not going to work. So contemplation is a process where you must come and say, yeah, is that actually I think you're saying is right. I do agree. When I do this, it's creating a problem. That's happening, as well as you believe if you improve, you will benefit. So the key word here is benefit. Benefit here may not mean financial benefit. To some people, financial benefit is important. To other people, social benefit. That means, are people going to be happy with me? To some people, that's a benefit. So they need to do that. Then it comes to the third stage, which is determination. So once they say, okay, boss, I'm ready, I want to make this change because I do see this is going to help me, then the process, the real behavior change process happens. So these are the things that you don't see in BI, but if you apply this in the workplace context, it's going to tremendously help. Then it goes into action. This is where we get them. Part of it is equipping them with the right knowledge, right tools, right mindset to start doing and to get them to apply. Now, it's very interesting. In this model, there is the acknowledgement of relapse. That means people will tend to go back to old behaviors, right? And this is, so part of, just now we'd say about thinking in advance, deliberate thinking is to recognize in any behavioral change, there will be people relapsing. And it's important because then it helps us to develop strategies. Finally, maintenance. Maintenance is about creating an external environment that is supportive of the new behavior, so that as the person apply the new behavior, it becomes automated. So remember just now I shared about automated function. When you do this and the new behavior become the normal behavior, this new behavior becomes automated. So this is the process that we go through. Now, what are the knowledge? So I'm sharing with you the body of knowledge that I've acquired over the year that has helped me in terms of putting it together. I'm not attempting to share everything on this because that is too not possible, but I'm just showing you the books and the reference material for you to go and do your own reading if you want to be able to strengthen your understanding of how to create behavior change. Drive. This is one of the books that influenced me a lot. It's done by a guy called Daniel Pink. His background is a lawyer, but he wrote it in a very beautiful way in terms of how do you get people to be motivated. And motivation is one of the key ingredients in behavioral change. The base of it is, for a person to be motivated, they need to understand their purpose, they need to feel that they are in control of their choices, and they want to be known as to be good in something, right? For some people that could be technical, for some people that could be influencing some kind of skill. So that's mastery. So this is about how do you make sure people are motivated to want to change. The second book is Power of Habits, is by Charles Duhigg, and it focuses on how do you create new habits. And he has this process of what we call the habit loop. We talk about trigger, routine, and reward. So trigger means in what situation are you triggered. So for example, like if you say, let's say, I'm using an example, let's say a smoker. Before smoking, they will nibble on their lips. Let's say they're like nibble on their lips, and that would say, okay, let's go for a smoke. So once you know the trigger, you need to be able to reprogram the routine. So in the past, if I bite my lip, I would tend to take a cigarette. Maybe now the routine is when I bite my lip, I want to quickly grab a sweet. So you create a new link to it. And then the reward is maybe healthy or lesser number of cigarettes a day. So that's how you talk about creating new habits. And then NLP. So NLP is another body of knowledge. Is to some extent it's called pseudoscience because it's not real science, but it has been proven to work from a observational perspective. And this one focuses a lot on what we call the inner world of the individual, respecting the individual perception, assumptions. How do you influence? And this is where BI practitioners, a lot of BI practitioners do take up some form of NLP training because that is very important in terms of languaging, in terms of influencing skills. The last book I'll probably recommend is this thing called Fifth Discipline. It's a very boring book, but it gives you all the nuts and bolts of how do you do changes in organization using a very structured approach. So the focus is on mental model. A simple word for mental model is the kind of assumption and belief we have. System dynamics talk about what we call ecosystem. So for example, you turn one gear, how does it affect another gear? So this is where the body of knowledge comes from. I'm not going to go into specific details, but just sharing for you. So behavioral change. So we have moved from behavioral insights to behavioral change, and I've shared with you in terms of this particular approach of creating behavioral change. Do we have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I think before we open up the questions, I just
right.
want to, very interesting to see that the behavior, the slide before this. Can you go back to the slide before this? Before this. All right. There was, yeah, no, after this. All right. Okay. Oops. No. The next.
Is it
No. I mean
down?
Yeah, down, going down. Yeah, down.
What roughly what is it about?
The relapse. You know.
Okay,
the thing
okay.
is, yeah, for example, we're trying to use BI to change the behavior to make sure that the positive actions. There's a relapse there. Is it, for example, some of the companies who are practicing, the staff are practicing on the what they call it, tea break. The tea break. Tea break is 10 to 10:30. Normally it's 10 to 10:30. Some example. But quite a number of us, we are so relaxed. The boss are relaxed. You don't care. You want to have a smoke. You want to have cigarettes and everything. Don't go ahead. Sometimes from 10:30 to it drag on to 11 o'clock. Everything. But the company is trying to adapt the BI to make sure that the staffs understand the importance of the times, working times. But again, why is it this? Even though the companies adopt a very powerful BI exercise, there's still a relapse. The people, is it because the people are so stubborn to change? And why do we need? How can we change this stubbornness to the positive side? Isaac.
So there is a Malay proverb that says a father crab trying to teach the son crab how to walk straight, right?
Agree. Right.
So with regards to behaviors, especially in the workplace, BI is only as powerful if the leadership models the behavior. So for example, a typical one, coming late for meeting. You may say all the time, but if I keep seeing my boss keeps coming late for a meeting, I may follow him because his action is more powerful than any posters you have in the workplace.
Okay.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes, yes, yes. I think yes. Yeah. I think we open up to the questions from Puan No Azlin. You see, the BI focus only on the mindset of stakeholders or to change the behaviors, people, or system that we are targeting.
Where I'm coming from is BI doesn't really change the mindset; it just change the behavior, compliance behavior. That's all. So which is why BI is less intrusive than behavior change, because you don't need to tell the person I need you to change. You just do it slowly, which is why the EAST becomes a key driver in behavior insights. So it is not addressing mindset issue. It's just getting them to comply.
I think, do you need I mean, a company, do they need a specific person or specific department or specific divisions just to take care of the BI initiatives?
If you are, you do need to have a specialist, or what we say, somebody with a proper knowledge. But I find so I use an organizational development approach, which means we try to empower people to do it. So maybe getting one person to be certified in BI and then teaching it to the, let's say, to the HODs is more impactful, and getting the buy-in of the HODs to do it. So where I'm coming from is perhaps you might want to use what I'm sharing about behavioral change to get HODs to accept and adopt BI, and then they can help you with the implementation.
Okay, guys, if you want, if you want to ask any questions or share your opinions or your point of view, please do so by having click the icons hands icon, so I can unmute you, and you have to unmute your device too. And or you can even type your questions on your in questions column. Well, we have few questions, but please keep on coming, guys. The questions, maybe you can you can ask yourself by unmuting your device. Question from sorry.
No, okay, one question. Let's take one question. Then after that, I will share you a case study. I think the case study will give a bit more concrete in terms of what we are talking about. So one question first.
All right, probably from a question. Next question is from Muhammad Isha Muhammad Abdul Razak. Yeah? He said, please elaborate more task-centric versus people-centric in BI context. There's a big wide scope.
Okay, so task-centric or people-centric, in a way, it is, when you talk about BI, you talk about understanding what are the assumptions and beliefs that drive their behavior, right? Which is why in using the basics framework, you do a lot of stakeholders interview on understanding them, like what works for them. Now, task-oriented and people-oriented comes from more of a personality angle, where we talk some people, they value doing more than people, which means if I come to the workplace and the first thing I do is talk about your work instead about how was your weekend, I'm usually more task-oriented. So that's one. People-oriented are people who are focusing more on people rather than the task, right? So if you want to see how this falls under the BI, usually, so in the BI context, we do a lot of stakeholders interview and this conversation. Now, a lot of the times you will recognize, are they more task or people from the conversation and things that they tell you. So for some people, it says, following the process is very important. I make sure I complete the process even if it is super late at night. So those tend to be more task people. Whereas some people say, oh, I wanted to do earlier on, but I didn't do it because somebody came and visit me. So that tends to be more people person. Hopefully that gives you some idea.
All right, maybe you're saying that you want to share some of the your case study.
Okay, so let me go into a case study and how we use what we call behavioral change, right? So I'm going to share with you a leadership program. So the case study will be on a project that I did last year, and the focus is how do you change behaviors, the behaviors of leaders. One of the common challenge with leadership training is after the workshop, people go back to their old behavior. So we have created a model where approach where even after the workshop and the program, people still practice this new behavior. So that's what this program is about. So the case study is based on an oil and gas company we did last year. Now this behavioral program is for new managers. So one of the challenges one of the behaviors we need to change is what we call individual contributors behavior. We needed to change to people managers behavior. The complexity of this program is we were dealing with people from 6 different cultures. You have the Malaysian, Singapore, Australia, Vietnam, China, and Indonesia. So 6 different countries, so 6 different cultures, and we needed to use an approach that works across all 6. So the behavioral approach was how we used it. Now let me start by saying the benefit of the approach we used was based on the feedback of our learners managers. There was a 69% improvement in terms of their attitude, behavior, and mindset. Now, usual questions I get is, how do you do this? So let me just share with you some of the feedback by their line managers. So these are feedback. I didn't re-paraphrase anything. These are the words that used by the line managers with regards to the learners who has come through our program. And this feedback is received 5 months after they have attended the workshop. So we talk about sustainability. That means, are people still practicing it? So you look at these things like, for example, you look at things like, I can see more constructive discussion, tends to be less edgy, chooses her words more carefully, shift in behavior. So you notice these are behavioral change, not just saying nice things. Change in the behaviors, attitude, or mindset, more responsive in his work, improved in taking initiative. So these are behaviors that is becoming is becoming more permanent person. Last one, she's moving from a doer's mindset to becoming a thinker. So these are the things that happens with our people when they go through our behavioral change program, right? So our behavioral change program follows that model, the trans-theoretical model. We have adapted it for learning, but we use the same model. Now let me share with you how we have used it, and I'm going to show you the design of the program so you understand what are the steps we took to make the change. So the next 5 minutes, I'm going to cover you in terms of the program design, overall design, the kind of mindset shift that is required so that the behavior becomes permanent, and then the behavioral practices that needs to go into it. Then finally, some of my personal observation as well as my team's observation when we did a post-mortem on the whole program. Now, the design. If you look at this, all right. So if you look at the first part, the pre-contemplation and determination, what we did was we made the program to be optional. So just because and we work with high potential leaders, but we made it optional. What we did was part of the nudging that goes into here is the crafting of the invitation letter. So we work very closely with our client in terms of we crafted an email for them, having things like, you are part of the top talent and have been identified for this program. This program is often optional for those who would like additional support. Then we indicate things like, rest assured that if you choose not to be part of this program, you are not penalized in any way, because performance is by result, not by attending workshops. So we have all these things clearly stated in our letter as our way of nudging them. And because they felt it was a choice, the participation rate was actually very good, right? So that's the first part, the pre-contemplation and getting them, do I want it or not? Next, involve their line managers. Now, and this is maintenance, because what happens is after the workshop, when they go back to the workplace, they need to have a support system. So their line manager is one of the support systems. So what we did was, before the program begin, we actually do what we call an onboarding session. During this onboarding session, the learners with their managers come for a briefing. And in the briefing, we also told them what are their responsibilities throughout this whole process. And this is very important because we need to get buy-in from their line managers. Their line managers do need to do some things for us, but those are in terms of surveys and feedback, which is where we got their feedback after 5 months. So involve the line managers, very important. Third, recognize their learning and behavioral gaps. So this goes into contemplation, right? For people to know, how far am I from the ideal behavior in my organization? So those are the things. So we use things like 360 leadership feedback tools, and as well as survey, a learning needs survey. So we actually do this with the learners even before they come for the workshop, and this increased their commitment. And then what happens is they completed their 360 leadership feedback. Now, usually what we do is before the workshop starts, we have a one-on-one with them, go through their leadership feedback report and identify what we call developmental areas. And this becomes very important as part of the contemplation and determination, because it gets them to recognize exactly what do they need to improve. So that's what we did with them. Now, then number 4 is when they come for the workshop, right? So the workshop is where we give them the knowledge, and we also use behavioral techniques. This goes into the component of determination action. And later I will share with you what the behavioral technique has to be a step-by-step approach. Practice assignment, practical assignment. The workshop finished, they go back, they need to apply. So they need to be doing stuff. Most of the work programs fail because the minute you go back, they are not required to do anything. They were just given good ideas to have it. Because we made this program optional, the commitment to completing the assignments became mandatory. So by the time they come to do this assignment, for them it's a choice that they have made, which is to complete the assignment. And so therefore, we had 100% success in terms of assignment submission. Regular feedback. Now, we do have mentoring sessions throughout the 6 months. And therefore, the feedback will be in terms of their assignments, in terms of their progress of practicing the skills in the workplace, as well as for us to give them what else do they need to improve their skills. So that's the regular feedback. Now, other part of maintenance, we created support groups. Now, our learners for this particular project came from 6 countries. So what we did was they created their own WhatsApp group, and as well as we created groups for them. So they internally, they support each other by encouraging one another and all. And that becomes very helpful. So from an organization perspective, organization don't have to do much because the learners themselves were actually doing it for themselves. And then finally, graduation. So there needs to be an exit. So in any change program, you need to have a start, you need to have an exit. So this is how we design our programs. And this is a design methodology, right? You can use it for any other program. It doesn't have to be leadership. As long as these components exist, you should be able to get results from your program. Okay.
Isaac, just before you proceed, how do you what do you call it, how do you measure the success of this program? Is there a metrics on that?
Okay, so for this, the success comes from our conversation with the clients at the beginning. So one of the things for this, we choose to use their line manager's feedback as the success outcome, as the measurement. So what we did was we have a survey for their managers to fill up, and then we did an attempt to quantify qualitative results. So for example, in our surveys, we asked them to do ratings, and we got the feedback from their line managers. So for this particular program, the success comes from the rating given by their line managers.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the design. So one of the things that we all talk about just now is mindset. What we have done is we kind of broken down mindset into components. So it was very clear, and this is something that we get feedback a lot in our program in terms of the mindset change. A lot of time we like to say, oh, change mindset, but we don't know what are the specifics. In this leadership program, there are 4 mindsets that we had to shift. First is culture, dealing with the Malaysian culture. I don't have time to go to the details, but for example, respect. Generally, the word respect in Malaysia is don't question. If I question you, it's perceived as challenging. That tends to happen. Whereas if you look at a lot of the organizational design, it tends to be more Western, where respect is about respect the person, which means when I challenge you, it has nothing to do about disrespecting you. So the understanding of it is very different. That's from culture perspective. Second was mindset shift in terms of self. So one of the things that we do in all our leadership workshop is we start with a fundamental question is, who do you work for? And that throws everybody off, because the conclusion to that question is every one of us work for ourselves. The organization that we are in is merely a vehicle to achieve what we want. Now that itself is a mindset shift, because most of us don't think that way. So the minute you start to realize you're working for yourself, it takes away the whole thing about loyalty issue. Oh, I must stay here. It becomes like, then it creates what we call a mutual benefit, a contract. So if I am working for myself and I'm contracting my time to the company, it has to be mutual benefit. So that's one of the mindset shift that happens when we talk about working for self. The other part is this thing called separate identity from role. So if I'm bringing you back to neuroscience, where we talk about survival, one of the things is every one of us wants to know that we are Mr. Nice Guy. The problem is, in our Asian culture, a sense of identity and role is seen as the same thing. So for example, we like to say things like, how you do things reflect who you are. Now, it sounds nice, but it may not be correct, because in the workplace, there are things we need to do which is not what we like. For example, if you are in HR and your values is I value relationship, but you need to do termination, which is why a lot of them struggle with termination, because they think their identity is I shouldn't be doing that because I'm helping people. So another mindset shift that we do is to separate it. You are a nice person, you are a good person, and nobody doubts that, but you are playing a certain role. So for example, if you are at home, you are a father. When you're going to your parents' house, you are the child. So different role. The role of the father, the role of the child. Obviously, you behave differently when your parents' place. So that's the thing that we did. Third mindset shift we did was the workplace design. So once again, organization is top bottom. So we taught them to understand the power dynamics of the organization. We taught them to understand the purpose of organization. We taught them in terms of the purpose of senior leadership. So that becomes very critical for them to navigate, because the brain needs to make sense of their working environment. Office politics. We want another mindset shift is office politics is important. So we encourage them to be involved, but we teach them the methodology about it. Last one, the leadership part. Firstly, partner your boss. And I'm going to share with you a short testimony on partnering this, so that you know where it's coming from. Okay. The last one, to be a good boss, you need to be a bad boss. You need to be bad means sometimes you need to apply pressure on people. That's you doing your job. So this is the mindset shift part. Now, when it comes to behavioral change and brain learning, mindset shift allows the brain to bypass what we call limiting beliefs and conflicting values. So this is the major part, and this is something that is not in BI. This is something that is in behavioral change, but not in BI. Okay. Okay, I'm going to bypass because of interest of time. I won't be showing you this video, but this is one of my learners. She was sharing how she was against office politics, but after she understood this mindset, she embraced office politics, and in fact, she was so effective in it that her colleagues started to be suspicious, because now she is friendlier with her boss. Right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a rationale behind it. So the third part, behavioral change through practice. Now, provide learners step by step. So the challenge is this: people say delegate, but nobody has ever told you the 5 steps you need to do in delegation. So it is important. I mean, it feels like talking to a child, but sometimes you need to give people the steps on how to do it. Now, whether they do it or not is up to them, but it is our role to give them step by step. So giving the steps is important one. Secondly, practice. And people need immediate feedback, because without immediate feedback, our brain will think it is a threat and it will revert back to old behaviors. So when you have immediate feedback, people are willing to say, so this is what happened. Then the brain embrace it rather than reject it. So that's the immediate feedback. Assignment to get them practice. So because I'm not there with the learners in the workplace, we get them assignments to do. So one of the things we need to know is, Once you have commitment, people are willing to change, then they are willing to carry out assignment. I understand there are programs where people don't complete assignment because they were never asked whether they want to join the program. They were just asked to join. So there wasn't that part of making the choice. And then final is the mentoring sessions. And this is where, once again, it's about giving feedback. So one part of behavioral change, to make behavioral change more, increase the success, is constant feedback. Constant feedback is critical to this. Yeah. Okay, I don't have time for another video, but once again, once I share out this slide, you should be able to have access to this. So once again, this lady will be actually, what's interesting about her was after our program, she went back, she got promoted, she was a bit lost. Then because of the mentoring session, she went back to our materials, she started pulling out, and then she actually practiced it. And because she practiced it, she was able to get her team running very, very fast. And her confidence level increased tremendously because of that. So today she's one of the prominent leader in the organization.
Oh.
Yeah. Key insights. So once again, in order to give learners a choice, the program must be desirable. So if you're at a workplace, you need to make it look fun, interesting, make it look, basically people must say, I want it. Once you do that, then you give them a choice, they will choose it. Now, from a behavioral insight perspective, this is called nudging. Because I make it desirable, people are willing to do it, right? Learners' commitment increase because they have a choice. Now, what happens is, while you make it desirable, you need to be realistic. You need to show them what are the commitments required. So in our application letter to them, we state what is their commitment, how many numbers of hours they need to do, how many assignments they need to complete. So we put everything there so that they don't feel cheated. Number 3, program has to be meaningful. So there needs to be a fair level of personalization. So it cannot be too generic. You need to be able to address the individual's issue. So when we did the 360 leadership feedback, it became very personalized because they take away a specific development program just for them. The program needs to deal with the realities of their ecosystem. So for example, in our program, we talk, sometimes your senior leaders may not be the most effective leaders, but you need to work with them, right? So this is important because they practice what we taught them with their direct report, but they are able to shield their direct report from their senior leaders because sometimes there is these generational challenges. And we also teach them what we call coping strategies. Now, from a brain perspective, if I tell you the realities and I don't tell you how to deal with it, you are probably going to use your old method because that's how it works. So in order for me to teach you, for you to be willing to consider the new methods, I must also provide you with coping strategies so you know what to do, right? So that's some of the things that we did. Now, during the workshop, it has to be safe, it has to be facilitated, and this point, what we call sense making, is very important. If the workshop is more direct one way, people will be turned off. If the workshop is 2 ways, people will actually listen more. Then application of skill within a month period, very important. Support is very important. So this is the case study I presented to you. I know we have overshot, but if there's any more questions, be more than happy.
Isaac, this is very interesting presentations. There's a lot of questions here. Perhaps because the time is running out, perhaps we can choose 1 or 2. Give me a question from Nick Hasna. Is it does punishment works in BI? Because we can see that BI only apply on punishments. Well, maybe some light from you, Isaac.
Okay. BI leverages a lot of positive psychology. So it's about more what's desirable versus what's minus, right? So today, especially the newer generation, from my observation, the newer generation gravitate towards more positivity, more rewards. Punishment approach works for the older generation. This is a generalization. With the newer generation, rewards work better.
I see. I say one very interesting point. This BI. Do you think that BI is more towards science or more towards the arts or psychology?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
Because, for example, BI has a framework. That's the science part. The arts part is about the way. So, for example, when you do stakeholder interview, right? Is your question bias free, or is your question itself biased? That is the science part. That's the arts part. If you ask your question in a biased way, you get very different strategies. So the keys, I believe, one of the key strategies in it is learning to come up with very good questions in your interviews with them.
All right. Well, maybe there's a question from Miss Punita. On a serious note, earlier in the presentation, Isaac mentioned the measurement should be based on outcome, not on the BI or BC. My concern is that the approach likely in a peaceful society that the approach is on imposing legal response, because it will be easy for authority without needing to understand behavior, the variety of complexity of it, and providing solutions tailor-made to the BI understanding. So do you get it, Isaac?
No, can you just repeat again, please?
No, you see, probably she was saying that you're based on the outcome, not on the BI or BC. My concern is that the BC, the behavior what? BC is what? Behavior insight and behavior is behavior. I'm not so sure. Perhaps Punita, you can ask yourself. Punita, maybe you can explain further.
Yeah.
Do you have, can you explain further, Punita? Let me get her on unmute. Maybe she can ask herself. I don't know. I didn't get her. Punita, are you here, Punita? All right. Okay, we proceed to another questions maybe. How can we use from
let me just kind of quickly address the first part. So when I say measure the outcome, BI is what we say an enabler. At the end of the day, what do we want to achieve? So when you look at outcomes, for example, I have not had the opportunity to talk with anybody from Lembaga Hasil, but if you ask them, the measure is in terms of compliance rate. How fast are people responding? So those are outcome measures. BI are enablers, which means about strategies to get the outcome. So once again, the BI's approach is, if the outcome is not being achieved, we need to look at the strategy.
Or maybe BC is behavior change. Behavior BI is
change,
behavior change.
So behavior change is more personal, and it's more usually, if I were to sum it up, generalizing, you use behavior change more for internal staff development. You use BI more for your external stakeholders compliance, if you are looking from an agency perspective, government agency perspective.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. There's maybe I think that's about it. I mean, you can still do send any questions to our presenter. Perhaps Isaac, you can share your contacts point, or your email, or your social medias.
So this is my contact, and feel free to write to me. I'm more than happy. My point is always be specific in your questions, so I'm able to give you specific answers. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And Isaac, one of the questions is, maybe can we get your slides? Do you have to request directly to you, maybe? Yeah.
I will. You have all the. Okay. So there are two ways. I will send you the slide there. So because you have their emails, you can send out. But if those who want it immediately, you can just write it to me. My email is given. I will then send it over to you.
All right. With that, on behalf of Malaysia Productivity Corporation, MPC, the BI units, I would like to extend our thanks and appreciations to Mr. Isaac Peter for your fantastic presentation. It bring out the outlook, a new outlook of your BI, and we hope to be able to learn more. We hope you can be able to share with us more in near future. And to all our guests, to all our audience, thank you very much for joining us these sessions. MPC going to have every week, we're going to have a session of BI webinar on every Thursday at same time, same hours. And I hope you'll be able to join us next week. And with that, we would like to to stay healthy and stay at home, but make sure you stay productive. With that, thank you very much and all the best. Thank you, Isaac, and all the best to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.